In 2020, when I was around 20 years old, I had an unforgettable experience that has stayed with me for years. I was visiting my cousin on my dad's side at his remote cabin deep in the forests of Northern California. I had driven up with my younger sister to spend some time with him during the summer season. The cabin was quite cozy, but could only comfortably accommodate my cousin and his wife, so my sister and I were assigned to sleep in a nearby camper. The first evening went by just like any other. My cousin's wife prepared dinner, and we all sat around the campfire sharing stories and laughter before heading to bed. As I made my way out of the camper to get some fresh air, I decided to turn off my flashlight and gaze at the starry night sky. It was then that I noticed how eerily quiet the forest had become. There were no chirping birds or the soothing sounds of crickets, just an unsettling silence. A sudden feeling of dread washed over me, and I felt the hair on my neck stand on end. It was as if an internal alarm was warning me to hurry back to the camper, as if something was watching me. I rushed back to the camper, slamming the door shut and double-locking it. I could swear I heard the pounding of my heart in my ears as I chuckled nervously, trying to dismiss my fears as irrational. Nevertheless, I spent the entire night tossing and turning, haunted by the sensation of unseen footsteps and movements outside. I attributed it to curious animals, and perhaps passing deer, but my dreams were filled with an unsettling presence. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a strange weekend. By morning, everything seemed normal again. I contemplated sharing my nighttime experience with my sister over breakfast, but I feared she might think I was being overly dramatic or too accustomed to city life. So I kept it to myself and enjoyed the day with my cousin's family and their large golden retriever, Max. To calm my nerves that evening, I asked if Max could join me in the camper to help me feel safer. The walk back to the camper was uneventful until I reached the edge of the forest. I couldn't tell if it was because I was on edge myself, but Max seemed unusually alert, with his ears perked up and his gaze darting in all directions. That night, he slept beside me in the camper, providing some comfort. However, I had a nightmarish dream, and when I woke up, Max was fixated on the trailer wall, his ears raised, and his gaze locked onto something unseen. When morning arrived, I packed my bags to leave in the afternoon and took Max out to the small field between the cabin and the dense woods. I played fetch with him, throwing his ball for him to chase and bring back. Our game took an unsettling turn when I accidentally kicked the ball too hard, and it rolled to the edge of the woods. Max sprinted after it, but came to an abrupt halt, digging his paws into the ground several yards beyond where the ball had landed. He stood rigid, ears pinned back, and utterly motionless. I called out to him, but he didn't respond, not even acknowledging my presence. Growing increasingly concerned, I walked closer, calling his name louder, yet he remained unresponsive. I grabbed his collar, growing more anxious, and his eyes remained fixed on the forest. That's when I screamed his name loudly, giving his collar a gentle tug. The forest fell silent, and then a moment later, my voice echoed back from the woods. It was like my voice, but distorted, delayed, and unsettlingly unnatural. I froze, staring into the dark woods, holding my breath, only for my voice to echo back again, this time with an eerie quality. Without a second thought, I turned and sprinted back to the cabin. I rushed to my cousin, tears streaming down my face, trying to explain that something was out there in the woods. He comforted me as best as he could, assuring me that it was probably nothing, though I could tell by the look in his eyes that he didn't entirely believe it himself. My family had always been superstitious, especially me, and I could sense that he didn't want to fuel my anxiety further. I left that afternoon, and I haven't returned to the cabin since that unsettling weekend. Don't miss out on the bone-chilling thrills. Subscribe now and prepare to be haunted by the horrors that await. I reside in a bustling metropolis nestled at the base of the majestic Mount Rainier in Washington. This tale unfolds a few years ago in a quaint mountain town nestled near Mount Rainier. A bit of historical context about this region. In Washington, we have a rich history of Native American tribes that once inhabited vast stretches of land, though regrettably, that's no longer the case. Growing up here, we've been regaled with legends and spooky tales, but we never truly believed in them until this eerie incident occurred. My childhood confidant possessed a cabin-like home high in the mountains, constructed from the ground up by her father. We often had sleepovers that stretched for days or even weeks at a stretch. So, when something paranormal unfolded, it took considerable courage for me to return. Allow me to describe the layout of the house because it becomes pertinent later on. She had a full-size trampoline in her living room, an unusual sight to behold. The second floor of her house had an open design, allowing you to peer over the balcony and into the living room. Her brother's room was situated up there, right next to the balcony, with office cubicle partitions providing a modicum of privacy. The evening commenced like any other sleepover, replete with movie marathons and mugs of hot cocoa on a frigid winter night. Around 1 a.m., we began preparing the trampoline for our slumber. We were arranging pillows and blankets when one of those substantial cardboard rolls left behind after unwrapping presents sailed over the partitioning wall from the balcony. Initially, we assumed it was her brother upstairs, chiding us to lower our voices. We proceeded to brush our teeth and wash our faces. Upon emerging from the bathroom, we espied a water bottle resting on the trampoline, which we assumed her brother had tossed over. However, my friend noticed an odd odor emanating from it as she unscrewed the cap, a nauseating stench that was not just any vomit, but rather the most pungent, stomach-turning vomit imaginable, causing our eyes to water. We were both retching in disgust. We ascended the stairs with the intention of confronting her brother, only to discover his absence. We surmised he might be hiding from us, and embarked on a search, imploring him to emerge, but no response echoed back. Ultimately, we decided to apprise her mother of the situation. Upon entering her parents' room, we spotted her brother sleeping soundly on the floor beside their bed. Our confusion deepened because, when we had awakened her mom at 1 a.m., she had displayed obvious anger. We proceeded to recount the bizarre incidents involving the balcony, to which she responded that her son had been in their room since 9 p.m. A shiver ran down both our spines, and our eyes widened as we comprehended that, had he awakened and gone upstairs, we would have surely noticed. Yet, throughout the night, we had been the sole occupants of the living room. We staunchly refused to venture back out there, and instead bunked down in the same room as her mom and stepdad. Come morning, we mustered the courage to ascend the stairs, only to be greeted by a scene of havoc. Numerous items were strewn about, and the walls bore claw-like marks. Posters, books, and garments lay scattered on the floor, as if a wild creature had run amok. What made this ordeal all the more spine-chilling was that we had not heard a single sound throughout the night. Later that day, as I finished my dinner, my friend proceeded to take a shower. Approximately 10 minutes in, I heard her emit an ear-piercing scream and sprinted upstairs to find her in tears, trembling with fear. She recounted her harrowing experience, which has haunted me to this day. While she was lathering shampoo in the shower with her eyes closed, she heard the door creak open and assumed it was me. She inquired if I had finished eating, but there was no reply. After rinsing her hair and opening her eyes, she discovered the bathroom was empty. She initially brushed it off as her imagination. However, as she leaned down to towel dry her hair, she suddenly snapped her head up and found herself face to face with a Native American-looking woman who placed a finger to her lips. In terror, she let out a scream, and that's when I came rushing in. In the aftermath, we resorted to smudging the house and embarked on an investigation into the previous landowners before her family. Her mother divulged that land sales for development had only commenced recently due to the Native American community's historic connection to the area. To this day, myriad questions remain unanswered. Why did that water bottle emit such a foul odor? Why were objects being hurled from the upstairs? And who was that enigmatic woman in the bathroom with my friend? The wind howled through the dense forest as dark clouds gathered ominously overhead. The Baxter family had sought refuge in their secluded cabin deep within the woods, unaware that this storm would change their lives forever. Tom, a rugged man in his 40s, had brought his wife Sarah and their 2 children, Emily and Daniel, to their remote cabin to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. They had always cherished the serenity of this place, But tonight, nature seemed determined to reclaim its territory. As the storm raged on, the family huddled together in the dimly lit cabin. Rain pounded against the windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The flickering candles barely illuminated their surroundings, and the unsettling silence outside was occasionally shattered by a distant clap of thunder. Sarah tried to soothe her frightened children, wrapping her arms around them tightly. "It's just a storm, my loves," she whispered. "We'll be fine." But deep down, Sarah felt a growing unease. She couldn't put her finger on it, but something about this night felt different. Tom, on the other hand, was determined to maintain his composure, dismissing the growing tension in the cabin as a result of their isolation. Hours passed, and the storm showed no signs of abating. The family huddled around the fireplace, their anxiety palpable. Tom attempted to keep their spirits up with tales of their past visits to the cabin, but his stories fell flat, drowned out by the relentless rain. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from the attic above. All four of them froze in terror, their eyes fixed on the wooden ceiling. Another thud, followed by an eerie creaking sound, sent shivers down their spines. Tom reluctantly stood up and grabbed a flashlight. "I'll go check it out," he said, attempting to sound brave. Sarah clung to his arm, her eyes wide with fear. "Be careful," she pleaded. Tom ascended the narrow staircase to the attic, his heart pounding in his chest. The attic was a place they rarely ventured, a dusty storage space filled with old furniture and forgotten memories. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness as he cautiously explored the eerie space. The storm outside seemed to intensify with each passing moment, and Tom's unease grew. He stumbled upon an old chest tucked away in a corner. With trembling hands, he opened it, revealing a stack of dusty, weathered journals. As Tom flipped through the pages, he realized they belonged to the cabin's previous owner, Samuel Blackwood. The journals chronicled Samuel's descent into madness as he claimed the cabin was haunted by malevolent spirits. Tom scoffed at the notion, but his skepticism waned as he read on. Samuel wrote of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, shadowy figures at the windows, and the feeling of being constantly watched. His last entry was particularly chilling. "They are here with me now, in the attic, always watching, always waiting." A sudden bone-chilling gust of wind blew through the attic, extinguishing Tom's flashlight. Panic set in as he fumbled to relight it. But before he could do so, a voice echoed through the darkness, chilling him to the core. "Tom!" It was Sarah's voice, but something was horribly wrong. It sounded distant, distorted, as though it came from another world. Tom rushed back downstairs, heart pounding, and found his family exactly where he had left them, sitting by the fireplace. "Did you hear that?" he asked breathlessly. "Hear what, Daddy?" Emily replied, her eyes vacant. Tom's blood ran cold. He had heard his wife's voice, hadn't he? He grabbed Sarah's hand, but she stared into the fire, unresponsive. Daniel, too, seemed lost in a trance. The storm outside continued its relentless assault on the cabin, but it was the silence within that terrified Tom the most. He was trapped with his family, yet he felt utterly alone. As dawn finally broke, the storm outside gradually calmed down. The first rays of sunlight penetrated the cabin windows. They quickly packed their bags, leaving behind the cabin and its painful memories. Thus, the storm is over, and the family returns home. But the scars left by the events of that night will remain with them, a horrific reminder of the darkness that can lurk in even the most peaceful places.